Welcome to Peel and Reveal, the podcast where we share stories about joy, purpose and self-discovery. I'm Anneli Näs, and in this episode I'm talking with Julia Bergh, who is the founder of I Am Studio in Stockholm. Julia was bold enough to open her studio in 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, and has built that to a thriving business while leading the LFA movement in Sweden. For those unfamiliar, LFA, Life Force Activation, or CAP, Kundalini Activation Process, are energy practices that will help you reconnect with yourself and tap into deeper parts of who you are. In this gentle, guided session, your energy naturally starts to move, bringing healing, transformation, and a sense of flow. I got to know Julia 2 years ago when I became a frequent visitor at I Am, but today will be the first time I get to hear her story on how she went from a career in fashion to life with purpose. Let's dive into this very sparkling conversation that was recorded in September 2024. So, welcome Julia.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm good, but I've had a bit of a stressful morning. It's been a few days of meetings back to back, and this day has been no different. And I'm also planning a remodeling of my new apartment. So there is a lot of things to tend to when it comes to that, decisions to make, and at the same time running a business. So I've had, my pulse has been quite high today.
Okay.
Yeah.
and this is quite interesting coming from, you teach yoga and like, how do you handle this? Like, what's the hacks for normal people?
That's the thing. People think I can handle these things, but I don't know if I handle it any different.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, breathing pauses.
Yeah.
That is basically my go-to, I think, when there's a lot to do, to just take deep breaths and remind myself of doing that, because that, at least that helps to sort of soothe the nervous system. Yeah. And then also to check out in the evenings and not get stuck in the doing, but actually rest. Yeah.
Oh my God, I need to learn that one. All right, but I thought we would go back in time a bit and talk a bit about who was little Julia. How did you grow up?
I grew up in a super small town called Vara in the south part of Sweden. No water close by, so it's like, in Swedish we call it håla. It's like a hole.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
But it's a really sweet village. They have a few really nice stores. Unfortunately, not a lot of restaurants.
Yeah.
There was a cafe, like there is a huge cafe that's amazing. It's quite famous. But there was 2 cafes at one point, but now there's just the one. But yeah, I grew up
How many
there.
people live in Vara?
I think it's 5,000.
Okay. So it's a real håla.
It is. I wasn't born a big city girl, but I grew up with my parents and my brother, my older brother, and yeah, spent most of our times there, going to school, going to a lot of different activities. I was very active as a child. I used to practice gymnastics from the age of 5 up until I was 14, I think.
Yeah.
And I was a dancer. I was playing soccer, floorball. Like I did all of the things.
Right.
So I remember at one point when I was a teenager, I had like some sort of practice every day, sometimes even 2. And then I was like, wait, I also need time to hang out with my friends and do fun stuff. So that's when I quit gymnastics.
Okay. But you stuck with the dancing and the floorball?
Yeah. Well, not the floorball either, like for a while.
Yeah.
But soccer was the one thing I did for a longer period, I would say.
Okay. What dance did you do?
I don't know if I want to say. No, I'm kidding. I was a disco dancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And the thing is, when people hear that, they think of this.
Yeah.
You know, like John Travolta disco.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, yeah.
If you go to Google or YouTube and you type disco dance,
okay,
you will see young girls in neon clothing, like moving so fast that you sort of don't have time to think about what they're actually doing. It looks crazy.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But yeah, I did that.
It's just fun. The reason why I ask also is that when I grew up, I used to dance bugg and double bugg and that. And I think I might actually have been to Vara doing that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that they were huge in that.
Okay,
I actually also danced rock.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but that was for a very short moment because that was also some acrobatics and things, and I wanted to sort of maintain that after I quit gymnastics.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Oh, we might have met somewhere on the dance floor then. Yeah.
Maybe that's why you're so familiar.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been fun. We have I this weekend I was cleaning out like old stuff from the apartment and stuff, and I found all these like small cassettes, I think, from the things we had in video cameras that was never like transformed to another format, and I think it's only dance videos. So I was like, should I like do something with this? Maybe I should now to see if we actually competed.
Yes. But we were in different categories then, right?
I actually did some rock too.
Really?
Yeah, but not also very limited time. So we're talking here, you limited time, me limited time, somewhere very long time ago.
Wow.
But there wasn't that many rock dancers in Sweden.
No.
So it could have been.
Yeah.
Were you one of the cool people that they like threw up and flew and did a lot of?
I mean, I didn't do it for a long time because my partner, he quit after like a year or something.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was for a very short period of time. But I continued to practice on my own just to get the acrobatic part of it still in my daily exercise. So I went to like, I think I competed only like twice or something. Yeah. But I was super flexible back then, since I were in gymnastics for many years. I could do basically anything with my body. Wow. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. But
I'm like, we're gonna move into yoga eventually. I'm so curious about this one, how it felt.
It's funny because I quite often dream about doing all of these weird things with my body. Yeah. Like, like reaching my leg right up here behind my head and like doing these things, and I can feel what it feels like.
Because you could do it.
Yeah, or like do a backflip or all of these things. I know exactly how it feels in my body.
Oh, you're my idol now.
But I can't do it.
In your mind, you
well,
can.
Yeah, it's a story. Yeah.
All right. So you were very active as a child, and then like becoming a teenager. How was that?
Creativity has always been a huge part of how I express myself. So I used to draw a lot as a kid, and also as I grew older, when I was a teenager, my interest in fashion started to bloom. And I decided to go for in that direction, to start learning more. And I could tell every designer, I knew every season. I looked on there was this TV channel called Fashion TV.
Okay.
And that was like the only thing that I watched for years. My parents would go crazy. They would be like, "Can you please turn it off?" And I was like, "No." Watching all the different designers on the runway and people on the red carpet and that type of thing. So then when I went to the gymnasium, I studied fashion.
Oh, already then?
Yeah.
But did you have time for both the fashion and the gymnastics, or like the sports stuff, or did it kind of like exchange?
No, I think it all went a bit parallel. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. And then you went to fashion gymnasium, which eventually led to quite a career in fashion. That's from what I've heard.
Yeah, it did. It's funny because my dream was to become a designer, and so after gymnasium, I went out traveling for a while. I did the backpacking thing for 2 years, and then I decided to take a course in like the fashion capital in Sweden called Borås.
Oh yes.
So I took a course there in like fashion illustration, which was so much fun. So it was just about drawing different outfits and things.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Stockholm to study fashion, and also like like it's called pattern making, and I'm sure some of you guys know what that is, but most probably doesn't.
Explain to me.
It's basically like being an architect, but for clothes. So you're the one that creates the fit of the garment and actually creates how, like, the construction. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was basically what I fell into. And after I did a year of that, I got offered a job at H&M as a pattern maker assistant. And I said yes.
Wow.
So I worked as a pattern maker for like 8 years, I think. First within the H&M group in different sections. And then I went to Cheap Monday. And then my last job was at Totem.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it is such a fun job.
Yeah.
But the industry is very different from the industry I'm operating in now.
Yeah, you have to kind of develop on that. But before that, like, I mean, just from the outside, I mean, fashion is something that is very like hard to get into. There is many, I would say, primarily girls that want to get into it and so forth. How did you like? Or was it ever a doubt in you that you could work in that? Or like, how did you handle?
No.
You were just going to do it.
Yeah. I remember my teachers in school, they would say like, hey, you have so good grades. Why don't you become a doctor or a lawyer? And I'm like, what? No. I want to do something fun. And I think that's the way I operate in the world, that I need to move from my heart, because if I don't, things just doesn't work out. And I had this summer job when I was a teenager. I was offered a summer job in a clothing store, and then 2 weeks before the summer holiday they had to shut it down, and I was standing there without a job. So I ended up working at an industry. And like, I'm so impressed by the people who are doing those types of jobs daily, because to me that was the most difficult thing I've ever done, because it was so, like, every day was exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that for me was really challenging, because I didn't get to use my creativity. I started trying like, hey, maybe we can do this, and there was just like, no. Your job is doing this every day from 7 to 4. You check in, you check out.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I was basically depressed that whole summer. I remember it was the same summer as Duffy. Do you remember her, the musician?
Yeah.
She released her album.
Yeah.
So I was listening to Duffy while I was working at this factory. And yeah, I have high respect for people who are doing that type of job. But that was like a kick for me to really notice the difference in myself when I follow my heart and do the things that I really want to do. And for me, money has never been my drive.
Yeah.
My passion is my drive. And that's also how I can support myself financially. So I think for me to be able to thrive, I need to do things I find exciting or fun or enjoyable.
I know what you mean. I think like I kind of just have to pull on this like teenager thing a bit, because I think it's quite mature to like, you know, be in to have those thoughts as a teenager, and it also feels like you had a lot of drive throughout your like entire young life, and you said before also that the kind of the city and everything was quite safe and stuff. What were your challenges as a teenager? Did you have any?
Oh, well, I mean, of course.
Have to go there too.
Mean girls in school. And also, I think I've always taken such a huge responsibility for the people that I have around me, and I've been a guide to many since I was really young.
Wow.
I know my parents have told me how my kindergarten teachers would tell my parents that I would go and try to make the kids that were crying feel better and involve them in the game, and like that type of thing. So I think
I can see this in grown up Julia too.
yeah, I mean that's basically what I do for a living now. So
Yes.
a part of me knew from the beginning.
Yes.
But yeah, so a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
Due to that, I think my sensitivity and also that sensitivity that has created a sense of responsibility to make people feel better and make them feel safe. And I think I've been very hard on myself. We have this thing, it's very strong in Sweden. I think because I've been traveling a lot with the trainings that I've hosted, but I've never seen any people acting the same way as Swedish women does when it comes to achievements.
Oh, really?
And I'm no different. Like that has been such a huge topic for me, to having to prove myself or showing people that I can do things or that I am good enough. And that has expressed itself in different ways and in different scenarios in my life. And I think that is one of my biggest teachers, to be able to stop that programming. I cannot do that all the time, but I'm working on it daily and learning how to set loving boundaries and to not overstretch myself.
Yeah. How would you, I find it very interesting. Like, how would you describe it, like what a female achievement is in Sweden versus in another country? Like how, if you would try to characterize?
Yeah, I think I'm like, now I'm just talking about us as this would be true for everyone. But
generalizing, yeah.
Exactly. But for me, so what I see is that Swedish women we are born in a country where we can do anything we want. But with that sense of with that knowing, there is a sense of responsibility, and that can create a lot of pressure. And the society that we live in, I know it's different here in Stockholm, in a big city, compared to Vara, where I'm from, but it's still there. It just operates in different ways. And here we would talk about making a career or I don't know, looking perfectly, or there are so many different layers to this and how it expresses itself. But we are so talented here. We can create major things, but we're never content.
No.
Because perfection is something that we don't even know what that is. But we are constantly striving for it, instead of just allowing ourselves to come back to the now and to the present moment and actually enjoy the ride. It's so easy to get caught up in that structure. And I think the difference I see in Swedish women who have this sort of programming or structure within them compared to like a Spanish woman, for example, is that they don't take on that responsibility because it's not their job.
Ah, interesting.
It's just not part of them in that way. And that doesn't mean that they are less ambitious. They just operate in a different way. And yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, I can totally relate to this, not knowing that it was Swedish, but I'm like, yeah, she's describing me. But what advice would you give to people, like, when you've seen this insight, like, what would you wish for women to do instead? Like,
to check in with themselves daily and actually ask them, is this serving me? Is this what I want? Or why am I doing this? Why am I so hard on myself? Because I think that's one of my biggest gift, that I'm great at questioning everything. And when we start to do that, we can sort of not just scrape the surface, but we can actually like just remove it entirely to come back to what feels true and operate from there. And I think that's when we can continue to grow as humans, and also learn how to enjoy life more. Because I mean, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's a great lesson. Yeah. So we're jumping back and forth, but jumping back to the fashion industry where you were working, and I guess in a way you had your dream job when it comes to what you were actually doing.
Yeah.
But you eventually ended up believing it.
Yes. And I think for me, it's not like I'm done with that part of my life. It's more, I felt like I needed a break.
Interesting.
It was very intense, and I felt like something else was calling on my attention. So I didn't have a plan when I quit. But I did, and I think it was the first week of work when Cap came to Sweden for the first time.
Really?
Yeah. So it's so funny how life presents itself with opportunities, and sometimes we just need to make space for them so that you can see them. Yeah. So I think because fashion is still something I love, maybe not fashion, more creation.
Okay. Yeah.
And I have a dream to one day create my own line, and I don't know what that would like necessarily look like and when that will be, but I don't think it's far off in the future. But it will be in a completely different way compared to the ways that we were working in when I was there. Yeah.
I think there is kind of some learnings here that you might want to share, because I think for many people, you kind of can get stuck in a dream. For example, oh, but I love this part of my job and I don't see the other part of it and so forth. What, if you know or remember, like, what would you say tipped over to actually leaving, even though there were so many good parts?
Yeah, I felt like I was lacking purpose. It started to feel shallow. And it's so interesting because after I had been away from the industry for about a year, I took a yin teacher training, and in that training there was a small course with a musician, and he was talking about the healing frequencies of music and how that can affect our well-being. And he spoke about different notes and tones and how they affect our body differently. Wow. And yeah, it was pretty incredible, but that just, it clicked for me. I was like, but wait, this is what colors do. This is what fabric does. This is why we choose one thing in front of another. Because it makes us feel good. Yeah. So it's not that it was lacking purpose. I mean, it felt like that was what it was for me. But I think it was more about me lacking purpose than the industry lacking purpose. Yeah. Interesting.
So how did you, or what is your purpose today? Big question now.
Yeah, I think it depends on what part of me you're actually asking. But
I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, I think, honestly, I'm just here to learn and to live. That's what I want to do. I want to take this lifetime, use this body and this mind and all my emotions and everything that comes with being a human, and just be here for it.
I love that. I love how playful you look when you're saying it too. Okay, so you leave your job, and I guess that wasn't something that you figured out right away then, because you said that it changed, the purpose within you kind of came, that wasn't there. Yeah. So how did you, from leaving, or when did that happen? When did you figure that out, and how?
When I decided to leave.
No, when on your journey after leaving did you find your purpose?
Yeah, I think when I stopped searching for it. That's what everyone wants to hear, right? But seriously, it's true, because there's nothing to find. There's nothing to look for. It's here. It's right now. This is it. Yeah.
How did you figure out that you should stop searching?
The thing is that when it comes to my experience of exploring life, when I was really young, I used to hate going to sleep. I was so afraid of the dark, and I didn't know what was real. And I remember lying in bed, and my mom wanted to read me a night story so that I would fall asleep. And she would read and I would listen, but I wouldn't fall asleep. And then I would ask thousands of questions about life. What's real? What is this? Is this really happening, or is someone playing this, or are we inside a dream? And I had all of these different versions of what I saw, of what we refer to as reality.
I'm so curious what your mom answered.
Oh my God, she was so tired of me. She was like, "Can you just go to sleep?" I don't think she yeah. We've been talking about this afterwards, because I was like, "How did you handle this?" And she was like, "I just told you to go to bed."
I mean, it's pretty big. It's awesome questions, but my friend has kids, and I spend quite a lot of time with them, and sometimes their questions, I'm like, I have no idea how to answer this. And if I had gotten those questions, I would be like, yeah.
Yeah, that's the beauty of children.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, they aren't colored yet.
Yeah.
They're just a blank canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're just looking at life for what it is.
Yeah.
Trying to understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so it's always been there. And it's stayed like that for me for many, many years, all the way up until I was a teenager. I was very present, and I was very aware of that not everything that we tell ourselves is real. And then I don't really know what happened, but all of a sudden I sort of directed more attention towards the stories. It got too serious. It got too heartbreaking. All of those things that happens when you're a teenager.
Yeah.
My first boyfriend got another girlfriend, and all of these things.
All of those things.
Yeah, all of the things.
Yeah. This is interesting. I mean, what is it in that period? Because for me, I think it was around maybe 12 or 13. Life became something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also the expectations from the grown-ups around you, that all of a sudden you go from being a child to needing to take more responsibility. You need to get your grades up, and you need to show up for certain things, and it's hard.
Is it that we start having, I don't know the English word, förväntningar? Expectations on...
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because no one really expects that much from a small child. You're just taking care of them and making sure that they survive.
Yeah, and I think this is also part of that good girl syndrome, that children are expected to make mistakes. But when you grow older, it's a lot, the consequences are so much bigger.
Yeah.
And then plus that with having your whole worth into your achievements, every time you fail, or every time something doesn't go exactly the way you hoped for, that just proves to you that you're not worthy. And it's hard being a kid. It's not easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, that it was a shift. I think I was 13 or 14 when the story started to matter more. And yeah, and then after, during the last years, I was working in the fashion industry, and I had this urge, or this sense of something missing. And when I finally quit, and I took 6 months where I just went traveling. And it was beautiful. I went on short trips, and I came back, and then I went again, that type of thing. And that just brought me joy. And once the joy came back, I could see again what was actually happening in the now. And I was reminded of that because I was relaxed.
Yeah.
I didn't have to do anything. And it was just like that sense of, wait, this is life. What have I been doing? Like, why have I been pushing so hard? It's also a gift. I want to say that to all my fellow Swedish women with the good girl syndrome.
Yes.
It is the gift.
Yeah.
Because we can do anything we want.
Yeah.
And there is so much potential and fire and expansion that comes from that structure, from that programming. But when we start to unlearn that we have to do those things to be worthy, it gets a lot more enjoyable.
It's more fun.
Yeah, so much more fun.
Yeah, I'm still learning.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
But okay, so you're on this trip, you're discovering all of this. I'm kind of curious, like, because as I mentioned in the intro, I've kind of followed Julia for 2 years now. I've been to your classes and stuff, and I know a bit about like how your world looks now, part of it. But how does this come about? What you do now?
My current world.
Yeah, exactly.
How I got here, is that the question?
Kind of. I don't know even how to ask it because things just seem to be popping. So
I think I'm not defining myself anymore. I'm not trying to find a way to understand what I am to other people. And I think thanks to that, I can pour my creativity into projects and allow them to blossom the way that they want to blossom. And so before I started the studio, I was off for 2 years. And COVID happened after 6 months after I quit my last job.
Perfect.
In the fashion industry. Yeah. It was such a gift to get even more time to rest and decompress and not having to apply for a job right away. And that gave me time to think. It gave me clarity. So it came like a knocking on the door, that this studio idea. And it felt brand new to me. And I was a brand new yoga teacher. I hadn't been teaching that much, but I was like, okay, so I guess I'm doing this.
Love it.
And the funny thing is, I just need to tell this story now because it was just like a year ago. I found a letter in, that drawer that we all have at home filled with a bunch of
everything,
papers and trash and the things that we don't know where to put.
Yeah.
In that drawer, I found a letter that I wrote to myself about 5 years ago when I was in Bali. So this was when I was still working in the fashion industry. And I went to a women's circle where they guided us to create manifestations for the future. And it was like 5 years, or like 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and 10 years from now. And 10 years from now, I had written that I wanted my own space where there would be different types of yoga and dance and meditation. I would work with coaching. I would host retreats. And I had all of these plans and I had completely forgotten about it. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, it only took 2 years.
That's amazing.
I think so. Yeah, a part of me obviously knew this, but when it came to the time when it was time to press play, it felt like it just happened. And I think because I could see I am so clearly what it was, the vibration of it, the colors of it, the sensations, the feelings, I could see it as its own being its own entity. So I didn't feel attached to it. And creating in that way is such a beautiful process, because you don't need yourself to be, it doesn't need to be perfect, because it is what it is. And it's like, yeah, this is I am, this is not. So you don't need to even apologize, because it's not about me.
No.
And it never was. So that's how, I think that's the main part of the process when I created the studio and when I started it. Even saying that I did, it just feels wrong, because it's a co-creation. It's every person who steps their foot inside the door who is creating the energy in that room, the space holders that are the teachers, the karma yogis, my beautiful studio manager, and also our customers, our clients, like all of it. That's what I am is.
I think this is interesting also to build about. My company celebrated 10 years last year, so we had like a 10-year celebration. And for me doing that, I invited, all the employees, all the customers, like everybody who has ever been part of it, because for me, they were co-creating it. But I felt when I was there that many people don't see it like that. They see it it was I who created it. So I wonder if this is like, is this some sort of, sometimes when you do create something, you become a bit foreign from other people, and people create a distance to you where you might not feel that distance because you're just part of it, but it's something in how humanity maybe put things in baskets or something. But I kind of feel that there is a lesson here when I hear you kind of saying the same thing, that like everybody should feel, that every time you enter a room, every time you go into a meeting, every time you like interact with another person, you are co-creating something. And if you feel that even though you are just like visiting the studio, that you are actually contributing to it, maybe that can even give you more purpose somehow. Like how can we inspire people to understand this?
Yeah, I think just living it. I think that's the best way we can do that, by embodying that way of operating in the world. Because I think also even that, like looking at other people or at your community or at life as if anything needs to change. That's where we go back into the same programming. Maybe I can fix this, or maybe I can help them, or I can show them. What is it that you need to show them? What is it that they need to see? Like, this is obviously something in you or in me that I need to work on, because I still feel like something is wrong, or something is missing, or there's a lack of some sort. But if I go back to myself and embody the qualities that I find important, it will just have a ripple effect.
I love this.
It's not about you wanting it to change anything. It's about you being it, living it.
I have to go home and meditate on this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I love that. Okay, now I'm totally out of track, because now I'm in my own meditation process.
I could feel you spacing out. I'm like,
that happens sometimes.
Understandable.
But I want to talk to you about the different practices that you do and like how they've helped you. If we start with the yoga, like how did that come into your life, and what has that done with you?
Well, since I had so very few activities to do as a child,
you felt you needed more.
Yes. There was a gym in the village where I grew up that all of a sudden brought this new thing called yoga. And I think I was 14 when I went to my first class, and it was more of an exercise for me back then. And they also had Pilates, and I would go to that, or like spinning class. And then as I grew older, when I moved to Stockholm, I started going to yoga studios and practice more with a bigger variety of teachers. And I remember I think every every yogi would say this, that there is a moment with yoga when you just get it. And one of my favorite teachers, Shai, I don't know if you know who he is. He's phenomenal. Shai Perez, such a beautiful teacher in many, many ways. Very authentic and raw, but yeah, so talented. And I stepped into his class. He had a class at a gym close to where I worked at the time. And I came into the room a bit late. And he was like, you go at the front. And I was like, oh, okay. Felt a bit ashamed for being late and like all of that. And I think he said, he put us in Balasana, in child's pose. And he just shared like a short story. And I just started bawling my eyes out without even knowing what happened. And I was like, whoa, this is yoga. And it just clicked for me. And then a few years later, I met like my first adult love that crashed completely. And when I got my heart broken, yoga was my way back. Yoga was my guide. Yoga was my way of taking care of myself, of getting to feel what I was feeling and releasing it and opening up to new things. And yoga was like the thing that actually supported me through anything. Also an expression of creativity when I started to play on the mat on my own at home and creating my own flows. And yeah, yoga is so much more than just a yoga class to me and to many people.
And LFA and CAP, what is that to you?
It's basically the same. It's just a different expression of the same movement. I think I love how my teacher Tara explains the rhythm of life, how everything happens in contraction, followed by expansion, followed by contraction, followed by expansion. And this is how we learn. We get triggered or something feels weird or not good. And then we get to the light bulb and we're like, oh, okay, expansion. We learn, we grow until next thing hits. And it just keeps on going like that. And for me, it's the same with all of these practices. It's all just different tools to help to guide us back home. And when I found CAP, it was this deep recognition of something that I've been longing for my whole life without knowing. To come in contact with that sense of freedom, of letting myself go completely and just surrender to my physical experience and allow the intelligence and wisdom of my body and my energy body to do its thing. It was so big, and also so simple. It's like the most like of course this is the way it should be. And I remember my first class, I was so afraid after seeing the demo. I was like, I spoke to my friend and I told her like, hey, should we go? Should we leave? And she was like, no, I want to try this. This seems really weird. And I was like, well, yeah. And I lay down and all I could think of was like, what if nothing happens to me? What if I can't feel it? And then he came over, Venant. He touched my third eye, and I was like, I don't know how fast it went. And there were movements for like a minute or two, and then I just cried my eyes out for the rest of the hour. And afterwards, I was like, this felt like an inner war. And I've never felt more free in my entire life. And I think that's my why with Life Force activation with LFA to carry on this work, because it holds so much potency. It is a doorway to come back home. And it's so simple. You don't even have to do anything. You just lie down, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and then just follow. Yeah.
I mean, that is what you actually do. But I mean, there is probably people listening who's never been to an LFA class. Like, how would you describe it to them, like the effects and...
Yeah. So it is an energy activation. So by saying that, we work with the energy body. And from the yogic language, we talk about prana or kundalini. Prana meaning life force, and kundalini also life force, but it's two different parts of what gets us going. And when we talk about our life force, and when we speak about LFA, what we do is that we set this energy free. And it's not something that comes instant. It happens over time. You might have instant effects. Even in the class, you might feel or move or see things, and it can be very intense. But the process happens over time, which is also why it's very safe. And so it's quite subtle, and it takes different amount of time for different people to go deep into the energy. So when we talk about CAP, Kundalini activation process, that's why it has that name. So it's a process of awakening your Kundalini. So it's like pranapat, where we work with prana, life force, to activate the Kundalini awakening. So what we feel when we move, that's life force, that's prana. But when we have that rush, that innate rush that goes from bottom to top, from top to bottom, I would say that's Kundalini. But this is a huge conversation online right now. And I think what I would advise people to do who are into these type of practices, or who are just curious, to go and try something that feels like it's calling you, and then feel into your own experience what's true for you. Because this is how I would wish for all of us to operate in life in general, because we tend to go to science, or this person has so much knowledge, or this and this and this, but what feels true for me in my experience. And this is what yoga is so brilliant. Like, this is why yoga is so brilliant, because it brings you back into the body. So that you can feel for yourself and you can sense for yourself. It's not about reading until you know, or until you learn something. That might help you put your own experience into words, but don't make anybody else experience your truth. So life force activation for me is a tool to strengthen that muscle. And to deepen my connection to myself. And as it's a beautiful blend of life force, Kundalini, and non-duality, it also gives me permission to remain present. And to me, that's the biggest gift. Like, everything that comes with an awakened Kundalini, creativity, pleasure, all of the things are beautiful, but none of it is enjoyable unless you can be present for it. So for me, non-duality is the main takeaway.
And for someone, we talked to Navid yesterday and heard a bit about his explanation of non-duality, but it is something that is very difficult to grasp. So how would you describe it?
Yeah, very ungraspable. So when you work with non-duality, there are so many different ways of doing that. Like the technique that Navid works with, that's basically based on self-inquiry. It's very clear. It's like guiding with words and also through transmission, because everything is transmission. But what happens during a life force activation is that you get the direct experience of it through transmission, so that you have experienced complete resting or complete presence, and you will never forget it. Once you've experienced that, you will know what that is, and you will try to come back there until you realize that there's nothing to come back to, because it's right here. It's not about going to something. It's about stop directing your attention to the things that aren't true. And for me, it is the simplest thing there is, really. It's consciousness. We wouldn't have an experience if there wasn't anyone here to witness the experience. And who is the witness? It's so simple, but it can be so difficult to remember when life happens. And I think that's also the learning experience of this life. That life is always conspiring to get your attention, so that you can remind yourself over and over again to come back home, to come back to what's true, what's really happening, what is here, what's a story, so that you can tell the difference. And what that does is also that you start to take some of that pressure off.
Yeah, I'm kind of like curious now, because if we go back into where we started this conversation with your week, and like there's been a lot going on, like how do you utilize that knowing in your everyday life with all the chaotic things that can happen now?
I try to play with this quite a lot, and I want to allow myself to be 100% human. And just dive into it, because I mean, I'm here, so why not? You know, like, why not allow myself to be super stressed and like, things are falling apart, or like whatever. Because it's
Have you ever heard someone being so excited about being stressed ever?
Maybe this is my whole problem.
I'm passionate about everything, even stress.
Oh God, what an annoying human being.
No, it's lovely.
Yeah, I think so. I allow myself to go full in, and I think the more I practice presence, and the more I practice to rest, the deeper I can go into the experience, and the more I can allow myself to feel the things I'm feeling. And I can sort of like what's it called? Pendulum. What's it called?
I have no idea. Pendulum, maybe.
You know, one of those things that
go back and forth.
Yeah. That's obviously a very difficult word to say. But yeah, it's like that. So going, coming and going.
Yeah.
And that's how in my experience, that's how I extend my capacity in both ways. Like how I can expand consciousness, and how I can deepen in my humanness.
Yeah, I guess also in a way, everything that before felt very dangerous or frightening, even though I can feel that feeling still, it can also go away so quickly.
Yes.
So it's like it's okay to feel it in another way, because it's not all that I am.
Yeah, and there's less attachment, which is, and there are like some things are easier to detach from than others. Like for me, detaching from people is more difficult than detaching from outcomes of things I do in work, or I don't know, when I want to create something, whatever.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the people that I love, that's where I meet and face most of my challenges. Because I really I see, if I see something like potential, or like, hey, what if you do this? Because I sort of want to save them or help them or support them. But if I don't do that, and I just allow myself to feel the pain of them not realizing that they can help themselves, and then just be there, and for myself do the practice that I know I can in the challenges that I have, and embody the transformation that happens when I start to reprogramming and relearn or unlearn. That's what's gonna mirror them to see themselves. Because when I see myself, it gets so much more difficult for you not to see yourself. And this is why I love my job, because I get reminded of this all the time. Whenever I teach a yoga class, or if I teach a life force activation class, or sitting here talking to you, or talking to a customer in the studio, because it's right there. When we connect to each other, we connect to ourselves. That's what it is. So when we disconnect from each other, we disconnect from ourselves.
Interesting.
And this is also where non-duality, when non-duality means not two, non-dual, no separation. And whenever we separate ourselves from someone or something, we're living in denial. When compared to when living in oneness, knowing that whatever is in front of me is a reflection of me, then there's nothing to fix.
I love that.
Yeah.
I have to go back a bit in what you said, because it reminded me. So my yoga philosophy teacher told us the 5 reasons for suffering. Do you know them?
No.
I don't know if I can repeat them. I will try. But it's ignorance, ego, attachment, aversion, and fear of death, or clinging to bodily life. And how we have been like talking about it and describing it is well, through meditation and all the sorts of practices we can do. For me, at least, it's been quite easy to stop clinging to bodily life. Like I'm more okay with that. It's also quite logic to work with aversions, like stuff we don't like. Like it's easier for me to be okay with bad things happening. But then we started coming into attraction, and this is where I kind of connected to what you said, that it's been harder for you to not attach to people, because that is something that you do like. So for me, this was about, well, very vain stuff like chocolate and coffee and like all the attachments we have in life, they cause us suffering too. And to be able to like detach from them as well, not detach in the way of not like the words for this, but to not acknowledge them, but not having them be all that is, or like having them have such importance, or still learning to find the words here. But do you see that sort of thing in yourself too, that it's the stuff that you love more that is harder to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And I mean, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because you care more about it.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a bigger challenge.
Yeah.
And that was also my biggest fear when starting to do this work, that I would lose something. And the thing is that when you just allow yourself to let go,
Yeah.
you will see that you gain the key to a portal where there's infinite access. There's infinite access to love, and like, who needs attachment when there's nothing to attach to? It's like, from what part of ourselves do we want to live our lives? And is that from a place of lack or need or want or whatever? Or is it from a place of wonder, a place of curiosity, creativity? There is a beautiful method called IFS, internal family systems.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, it's such a profound technique to support mental health. And it's based on, we do parts work, so we talk about the different parts of ourselves, and then they refer to self. And how I look at it, self would be our consciousness. And in IFS, they have these 8 qualities, the 8 C's of self, that are different qualities of self. And those are, let's see if I can remember them. So it's calm, clarity, compassion, creativity, courage, connected, confidence. There's one more.
I don't know if you said it. I want to say curiosity, but you might have said it.
It is curiosity. I didn't say it. Amazing. Yeah. So, and I mean, there are so many more words you can use to describe self, but you have infinite access to all of these qualities. So why do you need to hold on to anything? Because there's always more to create.
Yeah.
There's always more to calm. There's always more clarity.
Yeah.
You know, and the more we remind ourselves of this, the easier it gets to navigate the things that we feel stuck with, or yeah. I don't know if that answered your question, but
I forgot my question. This is being present.
Exactly.
I was like, this was interesting. Yeah, I know my question now. I asked if you could resonate with the whole suffering, and I think it was a really good answer, because when we think that stuff is limited, I think it also creates this contraction that you were talking about before. And when we dare to let something go, like even if it's good stuff, or, you know, whenever we remove anything in our lives, it kind of opens up a whole lot of other things. I used to, before I went down this path, I used to think about, like, every time you move office or job, or you move apartment, like you move physical location, there is such a big difference, at least for me, in my life that happens. Like, I go to different places to eat, I might change gym, I might meet with other people, I have other routes, might get other habits. So like, just by doing that very small, very physical change, it opens up like a whole different world. And then looking into the path that we are on now, where those changes are not just physical, but they are in all sorts of bodies and life, like that happens over and over again. So it becomes like this constant transmutation that is even, it's much harder to understand, because it's not as easily visualized.
But you need all of the parts of your experience to come along for the changes to really integrate. So if you do energetic work, you need, like, your mind needs to understand somewhat degree. Your body needs to be here for it, and you need to connect to your body. So you need all aspects to be in line, or like there needs to be a readiness for that expansion to happen. And that was such a beautiful way of talking about it, in a very simple way. because that's basically what it is. You learn like, oh, here's a new restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I like this. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I vibe with energy at this cafe, not at this.
Yeah, yeah.
I like this road to work, not this. Like,
Yeah.
whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if we don't change, if we don't try something new, it's so easy to get stuck. And I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
If you enjoy being where you are, please stay.
Yeah.
Not everyone has the hunger to ask all the questions all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And I think that's also perfectly okay. Sometimes I wish I was more like that.
Yeah, but I was having an interesting conversation with a friend that I might also weave into this conversation. We were talking about like when you do also kind of on the more physical plane now, like when you do career changes and so forth, usually like you do a change and then there's huge expansion. So we were discussing like what happened before that happened, like what was this period and can we make that smaller and like what triggered it and so forth. Can you see that in your life, like these periods and what happened in them?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would refer to as contraction.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And I think it's not really about making them shorter, even if that probably happens over time, because the more you get to know yourself, the easier you have to work with yourself and you know what you need to do to be able to transmute things and transcend them. But I think also when it is difficult to let go, it's also okay to have compassion for that, because there's something there that needs to be felt or needs to be dealt with. And I think that's what humanness is.
Yeah, that's true. I come from a background of wanting to optimize everything, so of course I want to optimize the contractions as well.
But it's so funny because this is the modern world, isn't it?
Yeah.
That we always want to, like, we want to improve and we want to do things as fast as possible and as good as possible. But once again, it's not about then, it's about now.
Yeah.
And what's here.
Yeah.
On all levels of the experience.
Yeah. Do you, speaking of this though, do you have a good or have you discovered a way to kind of differentiate between when something is a contraction, like okay, I need to eventually maybe expand for you, or when it's just like something you need to learn and then move on in the same path, if you know the difference?
I would say it's the same thing.
Okay.
It just different types of contractions.
Okay, yeah.
Whenever you feel like something is not in flow,
I
would say you're probably in contraction.
Yeah.
And it can go super fast.
Yeah.
I mean, what if you would ask me a question that would make me feel insecure? That would be a contraction. And if I catch myself I'm like, oh, but maybe I can talk about this.
Yeah, okay.
That's expansion. Or, or maybe bypassing.
I haven't gotten to those questions yet. But now I might have one for you.
Yeah.
So what are you working on right now with yourself?
Right now I'm in a very like hectic week. Because I'm selling my apartment. So there's bidding going on.
Oh, wow.
So right now my biggest challenge is to stay in trust and actually keep a high vibration and not start to doubt that whole process. To enter in fear. So yeah,
how do you do that?
That's I don't know. I'm reminding myself over and over again, and I'm also asking for help. I think that's one of my best go-tos, to ask people for help and not be afraid to do so. So I texted a group of girlfriends, witches, if you may, a couple of days ago, and I was like, hey girls, I need your manifestation powers, can you help me? And they're all like, yes, of course.
Awesome.
And my neighbors, they keep on texting me every time there's a bid. They're like, yes, now it's coming, yes. So it's like I have all of these people around me supporting this process, reminding me that it can also be fun. It doesn't need to be so charged.
Yeah.
So keeping, like, allowing myself to feel the fear, the all the things that come up with this, but then also remind myself that it's not the end of the world.
No.
It's like, oh, what if I play with this instead? Like, how would that look like if I play with the power of manifestation?
Yeah.
Can I try different things? And can I trust that no matter what happens with the numbers, that things will work out?
Of course.
And can I stay in that vibration? Yeah, that feels true. I
Yeah.
can do that.
Awesome.
You know? So finding a way to support yourself that feels comfortable without not like taking the lesson, if that makes sense. Like still learning and still like challenging myself, but doing that in a way that actually feels supportive and not pushy.
Yeah. I love that. And we're about to wrap up soon. Is there any like topic or theme or anything that we haven't like covered that you feel?
Oh, wow. I mean, we could talk for hours, I feel like.
Yes.
These are my favorite topics.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's funny because right now I see this in my studio with the teacher that we have, that there is this new theme coming in, and I don't know if this is due to me going through this and working with this in my life, or if this is a theme in general. But it feels like embodiment is is our main theme as of now, in different variations and in different tools and practices. And embodiment, that basically means embodying the truth. And you can do that through different practices and tools, and it could be connecting to a very microcosm of your experience. It could be, okay, what happens if I try to feel my left kidney? What does it have to say? How does it feel? How does it want to move? Or it could be, oh, my programming thinks I won't be able to get this amount of money for this apartment. What is it showing me? Like, what is the need behind it? Can I support myself so that I feel safe enough to let that structure go and embody myself without that structure? You know, like there are so many different ways of working with it, and I feel like this is where I am now. Physically, also integrating all the energy work that I've done to allow it to come down, and like, so how does it feel? How does it move? Because that's also the human aspect of it, I feel like. And I think, yeah, I feel like we're moving towards a shift when it comes to this. I don't know if you can feel that.
Well, it's funny that you say so, because I mean, yoga has not been a part of my life as long as it has for many other people. But this spring already, I got so clear, like, you have to go and really learn yoga. And then I ended up doing a teacher's training, and people there was like, oh, how long have you been practicing? And I'm like, oh, 3 weeks. I was in Bali before this. So from the physical part, definitely, but also I can very much relate to your selling your apartment journey, as, for example, starting this podcast and having like, you know, no idea what this will lead to, but I get to meet awesome people and have so interesting conversations. So I'm like, it will be awesome.
Yeah, and maybe that's the reward.
Exactly.
And also the fuel.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Julia. It's been awesome having you here. I have so much energy in my body from sitting next to you for like an hour and a half. I'm like, I have to move now. I have to do something with all this energy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah.